Welcome to Classic 4x4, the podcast for and by classic four-wheel drive enthusiasts, collectors, and restorers. I'm your host, Chris Piccone, and you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Classic 4x4 Podcast, and you can follow my trials, tribulations, and antics of collecting and restoring classic four-wheel drives also on Instagram at Overland by the Sea. Today's guest spawned from our last episode of last season, which was our 2022 4x4 and truck market update with Juan Calle from Classic.com and the co-founders of 4B Exchange. And if for those of you that did listen to that episode, you'll know that one of the biggest surprises was in 2022, the largest price increase of any make and model was the Defender. But the biggest surprise was right behind that, which was number 2, which was a 74% price increase in 2022, which was the Mitsubishi Pajero, whatever you want to call it. Everybody calls it something different, but the Mitsubishi Pajero Evolution, which was from 97 to 99. And obviously that benefited from being able to be imported by the 25-year rule, which was a big driver behind that price increase. But I said, hey, it's time to talk about Mitsubishi. So I went out to hunt to find somebody to talk about Mitsubishis and didn't have a lot of luck finding anybody to talk about Mitsubishi. So fortunately for me, actually, there's a local guy who lives about 10 minutes away from me that is a Montero collector. And we'll talk about the difference between the Montero and the Pajero, which there actually really isn't too much difference. So I said, you know what, let me hit him up and see if he'll come on. So today's guest is Dan Perkins. What's up, Dan?
What's up, man? How are you?
Rockin', brother. So first off, thank you for being a guest. And honestly, you're really the only Montero guy that I know or could really find. And thank God you are very well versed and have a depth of information with these things.
Yeah, it's a very small, tight knit community. The Montero community. There not many. Everyone kind of goes after the Land Cruisers and stuff. So Monteros are kind of like the hidden gem, I guess you would say, like four-wheel drive stuff. And we don't get the secret out too much, but yeah, no, the Montero, Pajero, all that stuff, they're pretty stout trucks. So
that's cool, man. And the fact that you're 10 minutes away from me and you're also a coastal New Jersey guy is even better. We can't even sit in the same room because the only way I have to record this podcast is virtually. So we couldn't even sit in the same room and organize and record this podcast. But dude, I really appreciate you for being on and sharing your knowledge of the Monteros and the Pajeros. And I find it interesting that, there's the first gen, second gen, and third gen, Montero, and as they're known in ROW or rest of the world is the Pajero. And there's actually a reason for that. Here in the US, that particular model built by Mitsubishi, and here, not only in the US, but also in Latin America, it's called the Montero. But in the ROW, the rest of the world, it's called the Pajero. And I, through my research today, found out why it's called the Pajero. And that is because apparently in Spanish, Pajero is a bad word. So they couldn't call it the Pajero in the US or Latin America.
Why Mitsubishi had to name it that in other countries. They could have named it a million other things, and they chose that, and especially in the Spanish language.
And they could call it Montero across the board, right?
Right.
Things amaze me, absolutely amaze me. It's like Toyota with the Prados and the versus the models that they have here. Hey, sometimes it you never know why these manufacturers make these decisions. But hey, man, tell us about yourself. How you got into classic trucks and how you ended up, starting to build a collection, got into Monteros.
Yeah, so I would say it's probably some early when I was younger, like my early 20s. My brothers, we always had big Chevy lifted trucks and going four-wheeling. And every time I'd be out four-wheeling or whatnot, messing around out in the woods, I'd see a Toyota and I just kind of stared at it. And coming from Fords and Chevys and Dodges and all of my buddies and stuff, they were like, Toyota's not that strong and all that. From the mudding world. Oh, they're not that tough or not that strong or whatever it was, but they were never broken. And all our Chevys, all our Ford, everyone's trucks were always broken or always down or whatever it was. But the Toyotas, always wheeling. They wheel every weekend, no problem. So then years later, you know, I see my buddy, he buys a Toyota. We wheel on it, and the thing is just like indestructible. I'm like, these things are just stout, you know? So years later, I finally buy like something. I didn't buy a Toyota, but I bought something Japanese, like, you know, an import is what like a lot of people say. And I bought an Isuzu Trooper, a 4-door 95 Isuzu Trooper. It was black. It was just a box. I thought it was neat. It was at the time I thought it was reliable. Turns out it wasn't. So the Trooper breaks, it blows up. It blew a rod. The thing was a mess. So I'm online, I don't know, like 2015. And I'm like, I wanted something classic, something cool, like just oddball truck. So I'm on Craigslist. This is before Marketplace was like huge. So I'm on Craigslist and I just typed in Land Cruiser because like back then you could type in a word and it would give you a keyword and what you were looking for. So there's like Montero. I didn't know what a Montero was at all. I had no idea Mitsubishi made these things or whatever. So I'm on Craigslist and I type in Land Cruiser and this thing pops up in Freehold, New Jersey. I'm like, what is that thing? So I call my buddy Dennis. I was like, dude, we got to go look at this thing. I go, I've never seen this thing. I was like, it was like dirt cheap, all this stuff. So we go to this place in Freehold. It's like in like the farthest part of the lot in this guy's yard, like this like used car lot. So I walk in and I'm like, hey, you guys have the key for the Montero? And the guy looks at me, he's like, what? Like they had forgot that they had the thing on the lot. So he's like scrambling through the drawers. He finds the key and he gives me the key and I go all in the back of the lot and I find it. And we brought a jumper pack that day and I put the jumper pack on it, hooked the battery up to it, and the thing fired right up. Didn't make a noise, nothing. I'm like, this thing is so cool. I'm like, fishbowl, no tint, like basic stock interior, like nothing. And I'm like, this thing's neat. So I asked the guy, I go, what do you want for it? He's like, I have no idea. I was like, I'll give you $800 for it. It runs. I was like, can I drive it off the lot? And he goes, sure. I gave him $800 for it. Drove it back. At the time I was living in Brick. I drive it back to Brick. All my buddies are like, what did you buy? What is this thing? And I'm like, dude, I don't even know what it was. So I'm driving the thing and, you know, you buy weird trucks, you don't know much about them. So I reached out on social media and I found like just this super tiny community of Montero guys. Like it was super small and there was really nothing online, like forums and stuff. So it was kind of just like trial by like fire. Like you just got to fix these things and figure them out by yourself. And it was just funny, like over time learning about them and just like they kind of became like, I call them the poor man's Land Cruiser because it's like, if you can't afford a Land Cruiser, you could find these things everywhere for $4 or $5 grand, stout. You know, some of them have their issues, but like all trucks do. They're just great. I mean, they're body out frame, V6, like nothing too much about them. Great 4-wheel drive. I'll be honest with you. Phenomenal 4-wheel drive. Like just, it's got high, low, center lock diff. Some of them came with rear lockers. I mean, they're just I love them. Like I can't get enough of them.
That's cool, which is why you've amassed a couple of them. How many do you have right now?
Two. Yeah, two.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What? Tell me about each one of them. What years? What generation? Anything special?
So yeah, my white one that I've kind of had for literally ever since 2015. I've had that one for like literally ever.
That's one you picked up for $800.
That's one I bought for $800. It's an import. So like in other countries, Pajero and Montero, it's the same truck. But like if you go to like Costa Rica, they're Monteros. And like if you go to like Venezuela, they're Pajeros. It's the same thing. Puerto Rico and like other countries, like forget what other ones. Puerto Rico is like, I guess like it's an American territory. So like they use Montero down there. So my truck is actually from Puerto Rico and it was imported in like 97, 98. It was imported because it's technically a U.S. territory. So they have like, I guess, different importing laws or something. And it was from Florida because the only reason I know it's from Florida is because every time it gets super, super fogged, like humid out, my rear window glass just lights up with all these little like fishing Florida,
Yeah.
like, like
where the stickers were.
Where the stickers were, yeah. Like they just
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it lights up with all these like little like fishing Florida stickers on the back of it. And then I guess like early 2010s, I guess like 2010, 2011, it was brought here to New Jersey at like an auction, and it had just sat for like ever. And it must have been sitting in the guy's yard for years because they had no idea what it was. It was hilarious.
What year is that Montero?
93.
93. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. So that's a 93. What's the other one?
A two-door. So it's like kind of like it's a black two-door Raider. I haven't really told anybody that I bought it because like it's kind of like a little bit of a secret. Like a lot of our Montero guys, like we have a Facebook group, or Montero Bros. Shout out to Montero Bros. They're always rescuing them and finding them, and we kind of keep it on the DL. And I found one in Jackson, actually close to here. It's a black two-door, 89 V6, but it's a manual. Kind of toasted, but I've been looking for a two-door for like literally ever. And so I just have to go scoop the thing up. It's going to be a project like my 93, but it'd be cool to have like
that's a first gen though, right?
First gen. Yeah. So yeah, more like second gen stuff I mess with. I've never had a first gen. A lot of my buddies have had first gens, and it's like a completely different truck. Like from first gen to second gen, it's like, they're like totally different. Like the way they ride, they're built, like it's just totally different. Like Mitsubishi just every year just experimented with just like the oddest stuff, like different engines, like just all sorts of different stuff. So
that's cool. That's awesome. So tell me more about these 97 to 99 Pajero Evolutions. I mean, obviously they benefited from the 25-year rule where, these 97s are 25 years and they can come into the States now, which is awesome. Yeah. And actually we're in 2023. So the 98s can come in too, if I'm doing my math right. But these things saw, yes, when a car does hit that 25-year rule, obviously they're gonna end up getting put on the map, and they're gonna end up on the list because they're gonna see a large price increase because you can start bringing them in. But a 74% price increase is pretty big. So what is special about these 97 to 99 Pajero Evolutions?
I think it's because like I'm 36, so like my generation is just like holding on to those like 90s vehicles like with like a passion, and it's like it's such nostalgia. Like every time I get my Montero, I'm just transported to 1993. I'm 6 years old or whatever, and like it's just like it just takes you back every time you get it. I think it's like years ago, like when people were buying Land Cruisers and they're like, "Oh, I get my Cruiser." It just takes you back to like that time, like the gauges and all that stuff. So I think that, and because of 25 years, and because these things mopped the floor at Dakar. Like Dakar Rally was huge for Mitsubishi stuff. Like 12-time winner, they just won every single year, and like these and they're basically homologation vehicles. Like everything on them is just like it's a race truck. Like the seats, you come a Recaro seats, center lock diff. I mean, it's got the hopped up. Think they have the 3.5 liter dual red cam V6. So it's got like a hopped up, motor in it. They're two-door, which makes it cool. They've got like that body kit. I've noticed I've seen them just popping up just like everywhere, like literally everywhere. A lot of guys in Canada have had them. I forget what Canada's import rule is, but I know like years ago, like I first got my Montero. I was in the Montero Facebook group, and this one guy had one, and like I had never seen them. Like, what is that? Like they made these things and sold them to the public. Like they're just straight up race trucks, and like now you can import them. And it's so, I think it's just nostalgia, the 25-year rule, and they're just awesome to look at. Like there was nothing in the 90s like that. Toyota didn't make one.
Yeah,
they didn't make a truck that you could buy that was just a straight up off the shelf race truck. So like, for like car enthusiasts and like truck guys, I think these things are just going to keep getting higher.
I had no idea that Mitsubishi was a 12-time Dakar Rally winner. And I had no idea that these things were like just off the shelf, rally trucks and race trucks. I mean, that's super cool. How did Mitsubishi end up getting in, of all things, how did they end up getting into the truck game? Right.
I think because it all was from rally. Like they stemmed from rally racing. They won so much in the 70s with the Colt. There was the Mitsubishi Colt in the 70s. I forget what year it was. They started rally racing with the Colt, and it just became like it just evolutioned into SUVs. Like I think because if they were into rally, I bet I would say the Montero Pajero wouldn't even exist. But because they were in rally racing, and it just kind of kept going forward, like Group B rally racing, all that stuff. Once the Dakar rally started like kind of picking up steam, like early 80s, they were like, they kind of copied the industry, I guess you would say. But like early Monteros, like 82, 83 body styles, they're just like two-door boxes. And once they got into rally racing at Dakar and they started winning like every year, they won like every year. And they just evolutions into the second generation Montero. And then it just kept going. So
gotcha. The second gen was, I mean, that ran for, I think, out of all the generations, the longest, which was what, the early 90s to 2000?
Like 91 to like, yeah. So like with second gen Monteros, there's a blister fender, everybody calls it. It's a 2.5 gen. It's from 97 to 2000. And yeah, so like my 93 is like a straight body, narrow body. And my truck's actually kind of weird because has no plastic cladding. It's like a base model. So it has no plastic cladding. It's just got this kind of clean look to it. And a lot of Montero guys, like they'll buy one and they rip all the cladding off of it. And then it just leaves holes in the fenders and they look pretty tacky, pretty terrible. So like to find like a base model one with no plastic on it is like super rare. So like the Montero, well, I guess mine's kind of like a unicorn, but like, yeah, they get kind of weird looking when you take the fender flares and all the plastic cladding off of them.
That's interesting, man. So from like, and they had the third gen, which they brought. I know the Montero / Pajero, I think they're done as of last year. Mitsubishi stopped manufacturing, I think globally, but they stopped bringing them into this country in like 2006 with the third gens, which are kind of what I think of when I think of Montero. I think of that third gen, like that early 2000s to mid 2000s, where there is a ton of plastic cladding on them, man.
So those things, it's funny. There's another podcast I listen to, 4x Overland. Andrew O'Hare, he is a like old school 4-wheel drive guy. Like I love listening to him. He's from South Africa. He's got just a great funny attitude. And they gave him in 2001, they gave him a test third gen Montero, and it was a diesel and it was like plastic. And he took it to like the Sahara Desert or something like that. And he hated the thing. He called it the Tupperware Princess because it had so much plastic on it. He had ripped the front fenders off of it. Like he ripped like the tail, like the hitch off of it. Like he wrecked the thing. And he was like, it's just too much plastic on a truck because they just kept getting more plasticier. Like as like the generations went, they got more and more plastic on them or whatever. And but yeah, like third gens are kind of weird. They've got great motors, the third gens. Some of them have the 3.8 liter Myvec, which is like a super hopped up Mitsubishi motor to make like almost 300 horsepower. A lot of guys have swapped the 3.8 liters into their second gens, and they're like rocket ships because they're like, tuned for like almost racing. They're almost like race engines. I've read something somewhere they were like forged pistons, forged bottom end, like they're like legit engines. So yeah, third gens are
that's cool. Is there a massive, and you may not know the answer to this, but is there a big difference between the rest of world Pajeros and the US and LATAM Monteros, or are they essentially the same truck?
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same truck. Like in England, they're called Shoguns. Like in England, Ireland, like over in like Northern Europe, they're Shoguns. Like I needed exhaust manifolds for my truck because they kind of crack after a certain amount of years. And I bought them off eBay, and they came from England, and like on the box it said like it came in some like weird box driver, and it said Shogun 3.0 liter exhaust manifolds. So like it's the same part number. I've had to like cross reference parts, like oddball stuff. Like I told you before, like I need to I did the motor in my truck. I needed an exhaust, or not exhaust. I needed a thermostat housing, and the thermostat housing came in a Mopar box in my house. And I was like, Mopar? And then I like,
they had that relationship for years.
Relationship in the 80s that they did all this stuff. So like, it's like Mopar. So I said it to all my Mopar buddies. I'm like, look, I'm a Mopar guy now.
So I just learned this. So there's another name for these things. So I just thought that was Montero because of, they couldn't use Pajero here in the States and Latin, but there's another name for these things in I guess Northern Europe called the Shogun.
Yeah, Shogun. Yeah. Then there's another name for them. This is even weird.
Whoa. So let's start. Okay. Yeah, so most of the world, ROW, they're the Pajero, right?
Pajero. I say Pajero because like I've heard old school Japanese guys, like if you listen to stuff like on YouTube, they have like the car rally racing series that you can watch it and they all keep saying Pajero. So like, if the guys from Team Mitsubishi saying Pajero, I'm saying Pajero. So from here on out, we're going to call it the Pajero, right? Pajero, I'd say Pajero, yeah.
So in a vast majority of the continents out there, they were called the Pajero. Here in the States and LATAM, they're called the Montero because Pajero is a bad word in Spanish, apparently, right? So where are they called Shogun?
Yeah, in like England, I guess
Northern Europe.
Yeah, like Northern Europe. It's like England. I think Spain. I think
someone call it Western Europe. They're called Shoguns. And what's the fourth name for them?
The fourth one is this weird. It's like so like Hyundai tried to get into the United States in like the mid 80s. They tried to get into the United States to sell cars or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they went out and they had like a partnership with Mitsubishi, like I guess in like Malaysia, like Philippines area, all this stuff. And they made their own Montero Pajero. It's called the Hyundai Galloper. And it's like a hodgepodge between a first gen. Like if you Google these things, it's like a hodgepodge between like a first gen Montero and a second gen. It's got like first gen kind of body lines. And then it's got like second gen headlights and taillights. And it's just like this. I buy it from my truck. And when I looked it up, the part number, it was like, do you have an 89 Hyundai Galloper? And I'm like, no. Like, I don't have a Hyundai Galloper. I'm like, what the? It's a Hyundai Galloper. Then I had to look it up. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So, yeah. So there's technically, I guess, 4 names for the same vehicle because they all use the same parts. So if they use the same parts, it's the same truck.
That is absolutely wild. That's pretty cool, man. That's too funny. So you just mentioned you did an engine swap on your 93 4-door second gen. Did you swap another Mitsubishi engine into it or the same as the original?
Same as the original, but it's from Japan. So like it's hard to source these engines. The truck that I have is a kind of like an odd year. It's like in between. They were transitioning to the 94. So 94 Monteros are very like kind of like, they're almost the cream of the crop. I would say like cream of the crop Monteros are 95s. They're like just like the best. If you're going to go look for a Montero, find a 95. They're OBD2 because OBD1 is awful. Everybody knows that. And they're just a little bit, you get the bigger motor. The SRs have factory lockers. My friend Jose has a green 94 Montero. His is completely different. Like it's not even, their trucks are not even 8 months apart. And they're completely different. Like we hang out or whatever. It's like totally different. Like my fuel system, my truck, different. It's just it's just strange.
I had no idea that there was this much variation in
so much. Every single year, it was this. I think what they did was they took what they did in Dakar racing, like ROD, like they just R&D'd them, and then just put them out to the masses. So like for last few months, I've had just like kind of fuel issues with my truck. I need a fuel pump. And living in New Jersey, things rust and rot. So I needed a fuel pump assembly. I've got all that stuff from actually a guy in Arizona, which is awesome. And as I was doing it, the fuel lines on these things are massive. Like I've been around cars my whole life. My buddy and I take apart the fuel pump assembly and we're looking at this line. It's like the high pressure line coming off the fuel line. It looked like it was off a straight race car. Why is this on like an everyday person's vehicle? It was like 100 psi fuel line with these hydraulic fittings. I'm like, I've never in my life like looked at like a fuel line. Like, I took it to a shop and the guy was like, I have no idea what that is. I was like, okay. Like, I had to like make my own stuff. And
does
like,
that go on a Caterpillar back? Is that a hydraulic line for Caterpillar backhoe? Right?
Hydraulic line coming off the high pressure line. And this is a 3-liter V6 that makes like 140 horsepower. I'm not running like a big block with a blower. Like, I don't need massive fuel lines on this thing. So we fix it, we made our own lines and all this stuff, but like everything was just overbuilt. And like every year was just a continuous different variation. It's the same part number, really. Like, I bought parts for the truck. Same part number. I get it home. I pull the thing out. I pull the part out of my truck, and it's different. Same part number. So then I have to cross-reference the part number. It's just like a lot of guys just get fed up with it, and they're just like, this thing is just ridiculous. I think that's why there are just not many left, because people are just like, I'm not wasting my time with this. I'm just going to buy a Toyota or something.
There you go. So back to the 95, you mentioned it's like, why is the 95 like the absolute, like the sweet spot for the Monteros or Pajeros?
It's like they're OBD2. Mm-hmm. They're right in the middle of the second generation. So it's like everything they've done up to that point, it's been like 4 or 5 years of like the same truck, basically. Everything is just kind of like polished, better. I don't know. Like, if I'm going to buy another one, a second gen, I'm going to buy a 95. I don't know. There's something about the 95s from researching and just like looking in the Montero world. The 95s I feel like are like the cream of the crop ones.
So we talked a lot about this, like, thank God I tripped over you. You're a local guy. I happen to be connected with you. Like, you're the only Montero guy or Pajero guy or Mitsubishi guy I know. Like, talk to me about the community. Like, what is it? Like, it's not a big community. It's a closed community. And like, there isn't a ton out there. Like, so what's the community like?
The community is actually really cool. Like, at first, the community, like when you're a newcomer in these things, it's like you ask questions, and like, a lot of the old timer guys that have had these things, because for so long, like nobody knew about them. Like, I mean, they still kind of don't, but like they were so hidden and so just like off, like didn't care, really. And there's a few guys out there that like mess with them and kind of kept it as a secret. And then as like newcomers, you're asking all these questions, this and that, and how does this do this and this and that? Where do I get these parts? And they kind of at first are just like, they're like, nah, like they don't want to mess with you. And then the community kind of got bigger. And shout out this guy his name's Adam Campbell. He's in Arizona. There's an Arizona Montero crew. There's a bunch of dudes. His name's Toasty on Instagram. They're awesome. Like, all these dudes out in Arizona, they've helped me on Instagram with the thing for years. Like, if I have like an oddball question that like I can't find on the internet, I'll hit one of them up, and they're usually within like a couple hours. Like, full blown, like, yeah, it's this, it could be this, could be that, like, mess with this, these did this. Like, I had trouble with the, on mine, that there was a temperature sensor. I was getting like hard starts. The thing wouldn't start if it got hot. And I'm like, is it fuel? Like, what is it? And all it was a temperature sensor, like a thermostat sensor. And it's just like oddball stuff. So like, no,
but there's a guy out there that was like, oh man, I've had this happen before.
Yeah, like I call them cronies. Like, there's just cronies. Like, these dudes that just been around these things forever. And like, at first they're just kind of like, they don't want to give away the secrets of it. Right. But then you kind of have to like build their trust or whatever. But like, I try to tell like everybody, like you gotta have to figure it out on your own at first. And then, if you try it and you don't mess, then I'll tell you. But like,
that's my favorite part about car and truck culture is the community, the different people that you come across. But like, I personally, when I like in my collection, the core of it has always been Jeeps, which is a unique community in itself, because it is just like, it is a very large community, but so from a socioeconomic standpoint, it is very wide, right? You have guys that have these amazing, 100-point restoration, global collections, to like dudes that have like a couple on the front lawn that they've been working on for 20 years and they have the passion for it. And that's what's so cool is like you have it. And then you have like, you know, that like I've had FJs, like that is a great community, but they're like very tight knit. Like they keep it close, but they'll help you do anything, right? They will like, they're into it. They, you know, they like
we'll drive across the country to help you cruiser guys.
Oh man. The cruiser guys are like, they're a little like, there's a lot of little trepidation with them at first. Like you were saying, you got to build the trust, but like they will like, and the same is true with the Harvester, like the International Harvester. That community, in my opinion, is probably the strongest, like classic truck community out there. They're close, and all of them are close, and it's amazing because they all know each other. Like it doesn't matter if you're like a guy in Iowa, a guy in Texas, a guy in Oregon, like they all know each other. That is like mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah,
and then
like I think cruiser guys, they'll like, oh, I'm gonna go help this guy I've never met before. He lives like 4 states away and they'll go out of their way and just like help those. I mean, Montero guys,
the Harvester guys are like that too, man. Like the Harvester crew are like that also. And then you have I've had some Land Rovers, and the Land Rover community is a whole different ball of wax. Yeah, and that is like, I mean, they'll pretty much just rag on each other all day long and down each other all day long. Right? But then they also support each other too, where it's like it's like the oddest thing in the world, right? But
so strange. Yeah.
It's great to hear that the Montero community is though it's small, you know, it's tight knit and guys will help you out. I really love to hear that, because that's half the battle. It's not it's the cars, the trucks, they're fun, like having them, working on them, collecting them, but it's all about the community too.
It's all about the community. Yeah. Like I'm social media, like if I would probably have got rid of the thing years ago if it wasn't for social media. Like there's no information on them. Like there's a few threads on like I Hate Mud and like a few other like sites, but there's really nothing like on them. Like nobody's written up things or now there is like the Facebook group, I think it's Montero USA Facebook group. It has exploded. When I joined the group in like 2016, it had like 1,800 members. I think now it's up to like 7,000 or 8,000. Like it has exploded. I mean, also because of the overlanding thing, like everything is like overlanding, which is truck and car camping really. But like, it's just a nice word for it. And like, if the Montero exploded because of overlanding.
So is that a popular overland conversion? The Monteros?
No, a lot. At first it was, and then people I think didn't want to do the maintenance on them, or like they had trouble fixing them. Because like I'll see a few of them pop up on like, you know, Instagram or whatever, and then their page just doesn't exist. Like they just don't use it anymore. Like you see like, oh, this guy's camping with his Montero, and then like he won't post for like 8 months. You're like, yeah, you got rid of it because like you just didn't want to fix it or something happened to it or whatever. So like it's like a labor of love. Like I kind of found in love with like classic like Japanese cars like in the 90s. Like, you know, I had Supras on my wall and like, you know, I had all those JDM cars and stuff like that. And I had no idea the Montero like existed at all. Like honestly, I had no idea. And I don't know.
That's cool.
Once I lifted it, put set tires on it, wheels on, I gave it a good stance and stuff. I was like, all right, this thing is, you know, like the thing when you park your car and you walk away and you look back. Every time I'll go to 7-Eleven,
it's right where you want it to be.
I'll be standing at 7-Eleven just waiting to pay. And I'll look down the parking lot, just looking at it. My buddy, my cousin thinks I'm nuts. He's like, you're literally obsessed with the thing. I'm like, I mean, if you don't like it, then why drive it?
Yeah, that's true, man. If you don't like it, why drive it, man? And honestly, like in my world, like I'm the same way. Like if I don't like it, meaning not that I don't like it, but I'm not driving it, I just get rid of it because it's like, I believe that, you know, these things we build these things, we restore these things, we love these things, but just like you said, to love it and to drive it. And if I'm not driving it and giving it the attention and time that it deserves, I want to pass it down the line to somebody that is going to give it the attention and time it deserves. So, you know, it's interesting to hear about these Monteros, Pajeros, and the other like million different names that they have, Shogun, right? And
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall as the Mitsubishi executives were naming this particular model. And you may not know the answer to this question, but like, do you know why it's called a Shogun in like Western Europe?
Oh, that one, because I think the Shogun was such a it's way smaller of like a name brand than the like Pajero and Montero. That Shogun is just kind of like very it's only in like that country. And I'm gonna say it's probably because Pajero means something bad, and the Brits were probably like, no, we don't want that name here. Like,
yeah.
And they probably didn't like Montero, so they're like, they just named it something else. It's just odd that it's just called the Shogun. Like, I know a few Isuzu guys. Like, there's like the Isuzu Trooper here. It's called the Bighorn in the rest of the world.
Really?
Yeah, it's just called like Bighorn, and it's the same thing. And it has like a ram logo on it. It's just odd. So.
Hey, I haven't seen those come up on the price jump lists, you know, the appreciation lists, right? Something tells me the Troopers might not be there anytime soon, but hey, you want to know something? You'd be very surprised if you had asked me in 2021 if the number 2, you know, a price appreciation vehicle in 2022 was going to be a Mitsubishi Pajero. I probably would have been like, what is that? And there's no way that's possible. But hey, it's happened, and that led us to here today, man. Yeah. So got any fun facts or interesting Mitsubishi facts for our listeners out there?
Yeah,
anything that's unique. Like, it was interesting. You said like, you know, they have the center diff lockers, and there's an option for the rear lockers, which on a car like that, like a truck like that, that's pretty rare from the factory, right?
There was a winter package, 2.5. It's like I think 98, 99 Monteros have a winter package, and they have like, they're pretty like fully loaded. Like, these things were like 50 grand when they were new. Like, they were not cheap SUVs in like the 90s. Like a fully loaded Montero, the 90 in $46,000. Like, they were not cheap. And yeah, they have like, some of them have rear lockers. It's the SR model. Like, if you're gonna go look for Montero, SR models have rear lockers. Every other model is open diff, but they have the center lock diff. I'm trying to think what else other like Montero tidbits.
So what were the different trim lines like for the second gen? So you said there's the base, the SR, there was a winter model. Are there any other special models or trim lines?
Base RS. The RS was sold here as like their base model one. There's a base, which is what I have, which is kind of very hard to find. It's like, you see them pop up online. They have like 15 by 6 steel wheels, like very small wheels. They have no plastic. That's like a base model. And then there's like an RS model that has like plastic cladding, but has like small steel wheels, like running boards are kind of weird looking. And then LS is like, I think every Mitsubishi dealership basically sold the LS model. It was like open differentials, center lock diff. They had like either leather seats or cloth seats, sunroof, different paint trims, pinstriping. And then the top and line model was the SR. Had rear locker. Oh, also gearing. A lot of Montero guys will buy like an LS model, and then they'll try to put like 33-inch tires on them. On the VIN tag on the hood, under the hood, there's a tag that says like the gear ratio or whatever. There's 427 gears, 4.7 gears, and then the cream of the crop gears are the 4.9s. Those gears you can run to like a 35-inch tall tire. Same, it doesn't throw up your speedometer, any of that stuff. So a lot of guys will swap. Like, if you have like a Montero that's very clean and whatnot, but you want to put bigger tires, run tires, they'll swap. There's another truck, the Montero Sport, which is like, it looks like a 4Runner. They sold them in the 90s and whatnot, early 2000s. They came with like an all-wheel drive system, and they came with like a lower gear from the factory. It was a strange truck. It has like an all-wheel drive transfer case, but it has 490 gears. So a lot of guys will go to the scrapyard, pull the gears out of them, and put them in their second gens, and you can run up to a 35-inch tire. Actually, taller than that, I think, because dude in Arizona has a green one, think AZ Pajero, I think he is on Instagram. He has 37-inch Coopers on his. He's got the 490 gears, and he does 80 miles an hour on the highway, no problem. Trying to think what other little tidbit Monteros have. Yeah, like the gearing is like a big thing. My truck is weird. It has 470 gears, so I can run to a 33-inch tall tire, and it doesn't throw off my speedometer. So my truck's got pretty much maxed out on tire size. If I ever wanted, I could put 35s on it, but it would throw off everything, speedometer, and it would make it even slower than it already is.
So you said you lifted your truck, right?
Yeah. So parts are very like aftermarket parts. Extremely hard to find. Was extremely hard to find.
Exactly what I was getting at. Like, this isn't like an off the shelf. Like, you're not going to like 4wheeldrive.com or like, you know, to Summit Racing and picking up like the off the shelf, like, suspension lift kit or full lift kit, for rough country or so. Where, like, how do you, like, you have enough trouble finding a lot of the parts because of the variations from year to year. How did you end up putting together a lift kit on this thing?
So over in Australia, they're everywhere, right? Old Man Emu, which is they're like
super familiar. Suspension. Yep. Oh, of course.
Old Man Emu, they make stuff for Jeeps and stuff like that here. They're like huge over there in Australia. So I jumped on the interwebs and found that Pajeros over in Australia are like they're everywhere. Like a Ford F-150 here is like what the Pajero is in Australia. They're literally everywhere. You can find them everywhere. So like I cross-reference parts for those things, and I found my lift. It's just a small 2.5-inch lift. So they are oil spring rear, and then they're independent front suspension with a torsion bar setup. So they got these big from the factory. They're massive torsion bars. Like, I took my factory torsion bars off and put them next to the Old Man Emu one. Even though it was an upgrade, they were like not an upgrade. It was like they were huge from the factory. Like, everything on these things are just overbuilt. You throw them in the lift, the frame is massive. Like, everything on them is just it's like huge. And so yeah, I got everything from Australia. So my rear springs, oil springs are from Australia. Luckily, I have Bilstein shocks on it. They're fine. Like, they're not maxed out or anything or whatever. I bought them here, just by measuring and all that stuff. Everything worked, but off the shelf stuff. Yeah. It's like, there's only a few like small guys, Adventure Driven Design is a couple guys in Arizona. And I think what else there is as far as like Montero aftermarket stuff. It's very, very small.
So it's not like a Jeep CJ where like you could literally build the thing from ground up. I'm talking by the tub, on Amazon.
No. Just very, very just like, if you want to do like, you have to ask questions. You have to like jump online and be like, where do I get this or where do I get that, or like, and then you have to just kind of wait, and especially if you're ordering like aftermarket stuff, you have to order from overseas. Majority becomes from Australia, honestly.
It's interesting that you said it has an Old Man Emu spring kit, right? So if you think about that, like, so I did an Old Man Emu suspension kit on my Land Rover Defender, and I know what that cost, right? And the OME, kits are not cheap in the first place, right? The shock sets are expensive. So that lift kit probably actually cost more than the car itself when you bought it, the truck when you bought it.
Oh, absolutely, it did. Because, and then I had to ship it. Like I had to ship them over here. I'm right now. I want to get a bumper for it. I want to get like a nice ARB bumper, but they're $1,500 plus shipping. It's like nobody in the States, ARB. I actually reached out to ARB. I was like, hey, you guys, you got any of them like in your back room? ARB in the US store, like, did they ever import any like Montero front bumpers with the winch? And like the lady's like, no, we don't have any of those. I was like, okay, thank you. She was like, huh? She probably told everybody, they're like, this weird guy like emailed me and asked me if we had Montero bumpers. Like, no, we don't have those.
That's too funny.
Australian find them.
Hey, that's where, that's where the community comes in, and that's where the passion comes in, is that, they make you work for it. But that's pretty cool, man. I learned a lot today in our conversation. I definitely appreciate, your time. And, the one question I forgot to ask you, which is the question I ask everybody: what was your first car or truck?
It was a 80. Yeah, first car was I was working at a print shop with my dad, and I bought an 87 Firebird T-tops.
Doesn't get more Jersey than that, my man.
305 automatic. It was a dog. That was the first.
That was your first runner. That's what you drove. That's what you drove in high school, man. That is too fun, man. That is super cool. But it does not get more Jersey than that. And that's what I love about it, man. That's super cool, man. Well, hey, man, Dan, I appreciate your time. Thank you for bestowing the knowledge on the Monteros, the Pajeros, the Shoguns, and whatever else they're called somewhere else in the world. But hey, these things are getting hot. Yes, they're getting hot. And for all of you out there that are looking for what used to be a fairly priced, very reliable classic 4-wheel drive, which from the way things are going in the market, they're not going to be that very well priced for very long. Hop on it, find yourself a Pajero, a Montero. But Dan, again, man, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us on the Classic 4x4 podcast. And I look forward to crossing paths with you, man.
Awesome, man.
Montero, Shogun, Pajero, whatever you want to call it, they're pretty cool. Follow Dan on Instagram at Tools4War. Also, check out our next episode with Steve Skrnovich from the Antique Truck Club of America, where we discuss the detailed history of 4-wheel drive trucks and vehicles.